Deconverted Man here. Well, I got a response from that guy with that weird voice, and it's time to analyze it for logical fallacies.
Already in his second accusation, he argued that he didn't have a worldview. So, how can he argue that I'm being illogical when he has no experience of the system of logic in the world?
Wow. Okay. I don't know what he means by a worldview, but I do know what I mean by worldview, and this might be a problem of natural language. What I mean by a worldview is the typical thinking of what a worldview, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, those are worldviews. Skepticism isn't really a worldview in that way. There's certain parameters that it has, but it doesn't tell you everything about everything. It just tells you certain things about certain things. So it can't be called a worldview in the same way. But if you want to say that logic is my worldview because that's how you understand worldviews, fine. My worldview is the logical realm, is the realm of logic, and specifically informal logic. So, this construct straw man that you've attempted to make using some natural language errors is false. I understand logic because I have studied it, and I'm able to use it to analyze your video.
His accusations were fallacies and formal fallacies. A fallacy is a deception, and to deceive someone, you don't give the whole picture of something.
And again, we might be having a natural language problem. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But a informal fallacy, a logical fallacy as printed on the logical fallacy counter, is different things that you have uttered that are incorrect within the system of logic. They are incorrect due to the system of logic. The way that you term fallacy is closer to what the outright lie fallacy is, not every other type of fallacy. A straw man fallacy, like you did a moment ago, is where you don't attack the argument that the person presented, you attack a weaker version of that argument. You're not really going after the real points that they made, but what you think or thought that those points were instead. When you do that, you're not really engaging the person in a debate, you're debating yourself, essentially. So for those reasons, we have to be skeptical of those statements. And what you say here is incorrect because that's not how logic functions, which is something you may or may not be aware of.
A form of fallacy is something made up by philosophers.
That's true, and it's also irrelevant. What's your point?
And is principally a fallacy that appear in an argumentation because of the accuser's lack of knowledge in the initial statement.
You got that sort of right and sort of wrong, mostly wrong. A formal fallacy in an argumentation represents when someone has broken the rules of how arguments work. When someone doesn't offer any argument at all, they just make a statement and they expect you to think that that statement is true without giving any reasons, that's a failure to give an argument. They've given you, in essence, an opinion, and it can be dismissed because it is just an opinion. It isn't something that has reasons to support it. So, as far as formal fallacies go, there are other ones that include the rules of debate, such as timing and measurement and how we respond to each other and what the dialogue is and whether or not we're shifting the dialogue. There's all sorts of negative rules of how debate shouldn't function. And there's rules that we have to or should be following within a debate. The formal fallacies are not relevant as far as whether or not we should be skeptical of your conclusion. The informal fallacies are relevant. But I like to teach logic as I'm analyzing videos, so I always make sure to try to point out the formal fallacies because that's part of logic.
I initially stated that God exists, so your lack of knowledge in his existence is the fallacy of your fallacy accusations.
And that's a non-sequitur if I've ever heard one. What you just said is not any sort of logical fallacy, period. So, it doesn't follow. And, also, not only does it not follow, but since it's not an actual logical fallacy, it is the fallacy called outright lie. Normally, he calls in to interrupt my show at this time, but we're not going to let that happen because I want to get to the rest of your points. I said I'm not going to let that happen. Moving on.
The form of the Creator in your mind will be apparent to you through insight, self-reflection, and expressing your beliefs on the internet.
And that's a non-sequitur and irrelevant. I don't see where that's coming from. So, knowledge of God, where is that coming from? If you don't say where your knowledge is coming from, it's just you're saying that you know about it because it's in your brain. Not only is that a circular argumentation, but it's a claim to special knowledge, that you know that it's God that's talking to your brain. You don't know that. You have no way of knowing that. You think that it's God, but there's no test to run to determine whether it is God or just chemicals rolling around in your brain. Alright, so you have 7 logical fallacies. Whether or not you understand what those are is independent of that you do have them. If you don't understand what they are, then learn logic, because you've already suggested to me that you don't understand it. The videos that you have and what you just responded to in this video suggest to me you don't understand what logic is or how it functions. Now, you might, but I doubt it very, very much, because you don't have a logically coherent argument in this video, nor do you have one in your other videos. You have a claim that you know that God is talking to you, communicating with you, touching your brain in some way, shape, or form. That's all it is an unsubstantiated claim that lacks not only empirical evidence and a repeatable test, but at this point also lacks a logically coherent argument. It is that last one that I want you to make. I would love for you to produce a test or empirical evidence, but you're not going to produce those things, and I'm not going to waste my time asking you for them because I know you're not going to produce them because you don't have them. But you might be able to produce a logically coherent argument, but in order to get to that point, you're going to have to go study and learn logic. So, go take the time and energy to study and learn logic. Don't waste any more time and energy on me or on YouTube, and learn logic, and come back once you've learned it, and then make a logically coherent argumentation about the things that you're talking about. And unless and until you present that logically coherent argument, we have to continue to be skeptical of your conclusions.